Well, hello there, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. And I'm your host, Tim Braheem. And I want to share with you a little bit about my guest today, Mr. John Wade. John Wade is someone who I not only know as a client who is in my Leadership 360 coaching program, but maybe more noteworthy is that John Wade worked on 3 personal loans for me as a consumer. So I got an opportunity to experience John in action several years ago now, and he is a technically terrific loan originator. We're going to talk about the value of that today and how he learned the skill of structuring challenging loans and how that has resulted in numerous very significant relationships in his career. We're going to also talk about the importance of momentum and his philosophies on pricing loans to make sure that he is consistently locking loans and building momentum and giving himself opportunities to work with real estate agents that he can forge new relationships. John is a master of connection, and I think that that's going to come through in this conversation today. Now, he's also a humble guy, and he will tell you that he doesn't do anything really fancy, and that may be the case, although fancy is a term that is based upon definition, right? So he's not out there on social media. He doesn't have a bunch of creative marketing strategies for his CRM, but what he does do exceptionally well is stay connected with clients and stay in touch with them. And I want you to get your notepad out today because there's going to be some incredibly noteworthy things that are simple to implement that John talks about, such as the importance of making sure that your clients know when you've done an outstanding job for them. And we're going to unpack all of that in the conversation that we're about to have. Before I introduce you to John, I want to say thank you for listening to the show. If you're not a subscriber, please do. The more subscribers we have, the better. If you like this episode, share it with your work colleagues. I think that they're going to get a lot of value from the tactical and important things that John does as an originator that makes him a $100 million producer. And if you like the episode, give us a like on YouTube or Spotify or whatever channel you're listening to this on. So without further ado, friends, I want to introduce you to John Wade in the 360 Experience. What's up, Johnny Wade? Johnny Wick, as we like to call you. How are you, man?
Man, life is good, man. You know, my kids are healthy. My wife still loves me. I'm winning. Everything else is extra.
Right on. Well, I mean, I've been excited to have this conversation with you. I feel like you're a pretty good bullshitter, man. Like you like to act like you don't know too much and you don't have anything figured out. You've got your business dialed in the simplest fashions and all these things. But at the end of the day, you're a machine and you originate loans at a really great consistent clip. And I think that there's going to be a lot for people to learn from you. And as I said in the intro, I mean, my way of getting to know you it was you handling, a few of my very complex loans many years ago. So give us a little background, man. Like when did you start in the business? Tell us a little bit about your mentorship with Brian, if you don't mind. I just think that's a little noteworthy. You probably learned some really good things from him, and give us an update on, where you've come from and where you're at now.
Okay, that's a big question.
Got a lot of big questions for you, bro.
That's right. Let's see if I can chew them. Well, I've been in the industry about 20 years. And I got out of school. I have a economics background, and I was working at an accounting firm. Nothing impressive. Got out of that, just wasn't my speed, and the mortgage business was really booming. Ended up getting into being like an AE for a while. Took a while to get there, but then, yeah, you're right. I teamed up with right after the mortgage meltdown. So I've been originating for about, 16 years, 15, 16 years. Really high-end producer, one of the top guys in the country. And, he was more of a option arm, stated type of a guy. And as you know, all that went out the window. And I was a bit more technical on, taxes and guidelines and stuff like that. And it was kind of a match made in heaven. His business was, it was on life support, as everybody was at that time. There's probably some parallels to that to now, not in terms of where the market is, but in terms of how tough the industry was. And it was like peanut butter and chocolate, right? It kind of went well together. And uh, uh, gosh, I want to say the rest is history, but there's a lot of history there, right? Um, and then in terms of what was the last question? Where am I now?
Yeah, where are you at now? Tell us a little bit about your volume, say in the calendar year of 2024, which is a great year to benchmark to because it's been a
Yeah,
challenge for a lot of people.
it has been a tough year. Look, if I hit every green light, maybe I'll do, 85 million. I should tell you the units, but I focus on the volume because my units maybe aren't as big as they could be. I'm out here in SoCal, so my average loan amount's closer to $800,000 a year. So I'm 85 million.
So
Five,
you're going to do about 100 units this year, which is 8, 9 loans a month, which is noteworthy in a year like 2024. And just give us a snapshot of what like 2021 or 2022 was, because I know that was a giant year. How many units and what was your volume then?
In 2021, I've been about 209, 209 million. 2022, about 110 million. In terms of units, I'm not sure. Probably a little more because 2021 was a big refi year, so probably my average loan amount was closer to 580, 600. I think I did about 360 units in 2021. 2022, not sure. I should know that, but yeah, about 110 million.
So I want to go back to the AE thing. I didn't know this about you. And I didn't actually know the connection with Brian being kind of a Alt-A and stated income loan originator, which this makes a lot of sense to me because when I came to you, well, when I came to Brian, and that's how I met you, I had a really complex file. I mean, just not showing a lot of income, coming from a weird amount of sources, was kind of in semi-retirement. And what I recognized right away is that my loan originator, Brian Minkow, who was the guy that I would think I'd be FaceTiming with a lot, ends up turning it over to you. And I spent basically all of my time in interactions with you on the 2 or 3 loans that we did. And I was always really impressed with how you were able to dissect my tax returns, break them down, and figure out how to give me credit for income that, frankly, a lot of loan originators would not have been able to figure out how to get my file done. How much of that was because of your AE training? Like, tell us a little bit about that. Did you learn during those times how to look at loans from an underwriting perspective?
100%. I mean, there's a lot of underwriting involved. Knowing guidelines, how to structure, knowing how to play in the gray areas. I would say even still now, even though the market's changed, especially at that time, it was like, if something wasn't explicit, right? If it kind of left it open, how were you able to sort of, and it wasn't even parsing like language, like semantics. It was like how to play in these gray areas and how to kind of explain things away. You had a lot of, but by the way, I remember you had a lot of stuff to work with, right? You had a lot of stuff that maybe if you dug a little deeper, if you looked into the statements, if you looked into the notes, if you look into the assets and, we're able to sort of offset and kind of remove some things that weren't necessarily ongoing concerns. But yeah, I mean, I was very, very technical on how to sort of put a deal together. I mean, this is all like old school sort of, or it's all like cliche almost, but a file tells a story, right? And you can have two different people can see the story in a completely different way. So how do you put that story together, kind of get the conclusion that you're looking for?
That's a really good way of framing that up. And back when I was an originator, this was before automated underwriting.
Mhm.
You know, I was pretty good at creating a story, right? Like I'd write cover letters to the underwriter and explain, why this was a viable file. So tell us a little bit about that. Like who taught you how to break down a file? And I'm just going to go on record. I'm not even going to ask you. I'm just going to say, look, this is critical stuff. Like if you're an originator in today's world and you don't know how to structure a loan and you don't know how to get that gray deal done, then basically, the gray deals are the keys that unlock the door to future relationships. And I'm sure that you have a lot of stories about deals that you got done that maybe somebody else couldn't get done, that captured a new relationship, that paid dividends into the future. But how did you foundationally learn how to break down a file, and what advice would you give those that are listening to this about how they can go about, sharpening their axe, so to speak, in that way?
That's a tough question. Because you're right, I do have a very high loan IQ, and it helps. It's been well, a big driver of my success, right? To be able to find a loan that was turned down and to be got to look at it and say, wait a minute, this isn't a turn down loan. You're not looking at this right. Part of it was, I mean, I've got an accounting background. I know how to read tax returns. Um, and, kind of, you know, just looking with an auditor's eye, right? Looking into the documentation. What am I looking at here? What doesn't look right? What's a question mark? And then really, really talking to your client. I mean, a client will tell you a lot of stuff if you sit back and listen. Um, and so a lot of times, it's in the story of their life that they're telling you that may seem at a lot of times you're like, okay, this is not helping me, but you pick up kernels and you go, oh, wait a minute, hold on. You said this about that and you made this change and you did this thing and tell me more about this investment or whatever you were doing. And then, you start looking into the granular portions of sort of, let's say self-employed people. It's usually high net worth self-employed people is where you really find sort of some of these nuggets. And then you ask questions. And a lot of times they'll tell you, well, this is what this is, and here's what happened, and I made this investment, and this is gone, and I'm no longer doing this. And then you talk about it. Well, if I spoke to your CPA, will he co-sign? Will he back up what you're saying? And can I get that? And so usually, stuff like that is where you kind of find, but you got to look at it. You can't just look at the top line numbers. It's really when you get into the you got to get into the weeds. You got to be willing to get into the weeds. And really, for me, it was being tenacious. I got a deal in front of me. I got somebody who wants to do something. How do I figure this out? Right? How do I get in here and massage this loan? And so I know that didn't quite answer your question because it's like, well, how do you do that? I think a lot of it is just sort of taking your time and researching and asking questions and really, just exposure. You start to see patterns. It's like math, right? You know your bag of tricks, right? You know your formulas, and after a while, you pick up these bag of tricks. When I start talking to somebody, I already know, you know, by our conversation, what I could use, what I may not be able to use, what could be valuable in the future.
I used to, just to give the listener some suggestions. I mean, you have an accounting background. I didn't, but what I did do was I would take accountants to lunch and I would ask them to teach me how to read tax returns. I mean, and or underwriters. I mean, there was an underwriter with Countrywide down in Woodland Hills. Her name was Savenya. She was the head underwriter there. And I took her to lunch one day and I said, now I want to learn like how to massage a file and how to take a loan that maybe somebody else, because they only understood the basics, wouldn't approve. Can you give me some examples about like ways that you've seen files, restructured to where now all of a sudden it's a sellable loan? And she shared a bunch of examples. And then I'd go sit with CPAs and talk to them about that. And like I said, I mean, think about how many, and this is kind of a frightening thought, think about how many relationships an originator misses out on because they don't know how to put a tough deal together. And had they been able to put that tough deal together, that relationship would have been sparked and could have paid dividends for numerous years into the future. But because, and there's a guy named Sam Rosenblatt, who I've probably mentioned to you before, who's very much like you, and he's a terrific originator. And there's an episode in the 360 experience with him. I mean, he's like an underwriter. I mean, just like you are. I mean, he gets deals done that nobody else can get done. And that's why he has so many loyal relationships as a result of it. So I want to pivot.
And just to cut in, I'm sorry to cut in, but I'm
No, no, no,
something
go.
Sam would say, it's important to know these things because underwriters make mistakes all the time. Guidelines change, rules change, interpretation of rules change. I have underwriters tell me no, and I go, hold on. This is what the guideline says. I understand this is what you're used to doing because a lot of things we do on force of like memory or habit, or this is how it's been, but rules change, interpretations change. So I'm really big on digging into what exactly is it saying and what is it not saying? Because a lot of times it's where it's not saying where you can kind of get the magic, right? And then at that point, then figuring out how to then put together the story so that, because a lot of this stuff is underwriter discretion, right? And when I think of an underwriter, that's sort of what Sam may say. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's almost like we need to know more than an underwriter. Right?
Yes.
Our job is to inform. An underwriter is looking at saying, hey, I see risk. And what's the challenge with this loan? And how do I assess risk? And then probably more inclined to say no. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. I look at risk and I say, how do I mitigate this risk? And how do I make you inclined to say yes? Right. And so I know it sounds like a really subtle thing because you're looking at the same facts, but if you're looking at a way to say yes versus at a way to say no, sometimes, and look, maybe it's 10% of loans, right? But take your volume, 10% of your volume. If you can take 10% of your no's into yeses, that's a win. And you're right. And that's how I win most of at this stage of my career, that's how I win most of my agents is, hey, I'm the guy that knows how to turn a no into a yes. And a lot of times I see loans come across my desk and I'm like, it's an easy loan, right? There's nothing that I did special here. I just sort of knew the guideline and they didn't.
Do you study the guidelines on a consistent basis?
Well, I don't study them on a consistent basis, but I remind myself that there's this old Rumsfeld thing. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's like, it's the things you don't know that get you in trouble. Um, I'm pretty good, and not that I'm a Rumsfeld fan, I'm not, but I'm just saying he said that, which was gave me a lot of clues, but I'm very good at knowing what I don't know, right? I'm very good at knowing, hey, here's a question here, and here's a kernel here, and let's find out what we can do with it. Because a lot of times I'm not even sure about something, and when I take it through underwriting at the higher levels, they go, hey, that's fine, we can do that. And I go, oh, remember that, guys, we can do that, right? So it's kind of, so yes, I do read guidelines, I do pay attention, but it's also, questioning things. Even if you think you know the answer, sometimes you don't. Taking the extra time.
I just want to loop back to that was a brilliant thing that you said that I just want to make sure we hammer home is that underwriters are going to look to mitigate risk. And you're going to look to, I don't think you said it exactly this way, but you're looking to de-risk their decision, right? So it's like thinking like an underwriter and saying, okay, if I were an underwriter, what would be the warts on this file that, I would be focused on? And how do I remove those before they even look at the file to where what they're looking at is something that is, very sellable and very palpable for them. Whereas a lot of loan originators just turn in a file that has some bruises on it and then are frustrated when those bruises get focused on. So do you have
And here's what I say. I go, hey, just like you said, those are warts. You're calling it melanoma. That's just a wart, and warts are fine.
I love it. So, do you have an example? And if not, that's cool. We can move on. But do you have an example of a file that would really hammer this point home, that you're like a file that you got that wouldn't have been sellable or approvable, but what you did to make it look good?
Oh, goodness. I don't think that way. I kind of play the game and move on. That's a tough question.
Okay. If something pops in your mind, we can circle back to it. I want to talk about momentum, and we can spend as much time on this topic because we were on retreat together 6 months ago. You and Justice and I are sitting around having a drink. We started to talk about the subject matter of locking loans and how much you're willing to make on a loan. And you said some very profound things in that conversation that I want you to share around the importance of momentum. And I think you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to let you roll from here with it.
I don't know if it's magical thinking. I like to think it's not, but maybe it is. I just need deals in the door. I'm not worried about, I'd rather hit 10 singles than 3 home runs, right? And so loans beget loans, right? And I don't know if it's energy, if it's me that it changes or whatever it is, but in terms of, talk about loans and, the profitability and the P&L, I just want loans in the door. So I'm willing to be a little thinner on deals so I can get that loan in the door. And you never know where your next deal is going to come from. right? You never know who you're dealing with, who is the influencer in the group, the guy that's sitting around in the lunchroom who likes to be a chatty Cathy and kind of say, hey, this is the guy that you need to talk to. So for me, it's just getting the loans in the door. I don't want to lose, but I don't think in terms of basis points and income and stuff like that. Yes, yeah, yes, you gotta control the P&L, but I'm just about getting loans in the door. The more people that are in my sphere, the better. Because those loans are going to be another loan, especially in this market. And even though the market's a bit unpredictable at the moment, this loan could be two, three, four, five other deals, right? And so I'm about collecting relationships and people.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. Collecting relationships. Let's talk about the loan originator who's listening to this. So that says, yeah, but my comp is set. I'm set at, whatever, 150 basis points or 125 basis points, and I can't work for less. Well, what do you say to that person? And how low are you willing to go to get a deal done? And I'm going to share some things about how low I was willing to go here in a minute, but I'd like to hear that from you.
Well, it's tougher in this environment, right? If you don't control your P&L, then you're kind of stuck with whomever you're working with. But I would hope that if you had look about your branch manager, whoever you're working under, I would hope that they're trying to empower you to get your loan. And if the branch has to run thin, I would hope they're willing to run thin for you, because your success is our success, right? So, for me personally, if the loan breaks even, I'm happy. Sometimes the loan loses a little, but then I look at the transaction. I go, who is this person? What is this? Who does this person know? Where did I get this loan from? Is this my second date with a big agent? Right? If it's my second date in other words, I did well. I got this relationship. This big agent is giving me another deal here. I'm not losing that deal, right?
You'll actually do the deal at a loss and lose money on it?
It depends, right? I mean, a minor loss, right? I mean, you kind of got to think about it. It's like stores do it all the time. You have a lost leader to get people in the door, right? So if I have Susie Q, who, I pull her up on MMI and she's closed 30 buy-side transactions in the last year, I'll lose a little bit of money on that deal. Sure.
And will you tell her and the
Sure.
borrower that you're losing money on?
100%. You got to let them know what you're doing.
Yeah,
Because
let's go through that. Let's role play that. All right. I'm your realtor. I'm the big fish that has 30 buy sides on MMI. And you get an opportunity to work with me and you're going to get skinny because you're in comp. I assume that you're not going to get skinny for no reason. You're going to get skinny because you're in competition and you need to. So you can make sure that you get that deal and you're going to break even on it or you're going to make 25 basis points. What are you saying to me as the agent?
Well, as I'm sure you know, this is not my strong point. I'm kind of a in the moment kind of a guy without, a camera on me. But I pick up the phone and say, hey, Cindy, look, this is a tough deal. I'm competing with whoever, but this is important to me. You're important to me. Our relationship's important to me. And you're going to know that one, when I do your loan closes, right? And it's going to close. You're going to have no headache and no stress. And, your paycheck's guaranteed. But two, I'm your partner here. And if I need to get aggressive in here, I'll get aggressive. And I'll let her know, hey, look, this loan here loses a little money for me. But it doesn't matter because what matters to me is you. Your relationship matters to me. Your client matters to me. And I'm not a guy who looks at who values a transaction for money. I value transactions for relationships. And then, of course, I ask at the end, you got to ask for the loan. You got to ask for the business, right? Because we'll make it up on the next one.
That's really great scripting, first of all. And I'm really glad that you handle it that way. I think too often times, well, first of all, let's rewind a little bit here. I want to unpack slightly more the philosophy. I mean, I think that you're saying something very profound here, which is that you have an opportunity to work with an agent. Again, you're not throwing in the towel unless it's necessary, but if it's necessary, you're like, look, it's either I work with this person and I break even or maybe make it just a little bit of money, or I don't get an opportunity to work with this person and then thwart the ability to have a relationship with them in the future, which is just smart business. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, but I think 95% of originators don't think that way. I want to ask this question because I know that somebody listening is asking this question. Do you make any money? Like if you did, if you do $85 million in production this year, and roughly, 8, 9 loans a month, as we looked at a little bit earlier, are you going to make some money this year? Are you going to pay your bills? Are your family going to be able to go on vacation, or are you
Yeah,
just
no,
loans for
I'm
free?
good. I'm in the black. Look, you don't give up on every deal. Some deals you're some deals are better than others, right? I mean, look, I do a lot of tough deals, and when you do a lot of tough deals, then you're able to hold the line. But on some of these deals, they're relationship deals. You know, it's part of the business. Uh, Look, I also think that you know, in this market where we are now, look, everybody's running a little thin, and for me, I look at the future value of the relationship as well. Look, 85 million for me is a bad year, right? So I'm looking at this year, what am I going to do next year and the year after that? And I look at this person as a I understand this is a transaction business. It is. There's some truth to that. But for some of these people that you're able to build long-term relationships, it can transcend that. And so the goal for me is, how do I transcend that? How do I move from a vendor to a partner? And right. And so if someone really understands that you're really ready to be a partner, right? You're ready to kind of go into the fray with them, win, lose, or draw, right? I think it people appreciate that and they sense it. And so, but back to your question, I'm profitable. That's not a fat profit, but I'm in the black. Yeah, I'm in the black.
Well, when you say you're in the black, it gives people the impression that you made $150,000 last year, or in 2024 doing 85 million in production. And I know that it's not that. I know that
Yeah.
it's a lot more than that. And you're being humble right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is that you're still averaging probably north of 100 basis points on your volume when it's all said and done, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
am. Yeah.
So everybody else can do the math from there without him having to show you his
Yeah.
W-2.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so, but this is such an important, like, the thing I love about talking with you, John, is that like we're not going to get into a whole bunch of fancy database management and marketing strategies and a whole bunch of social media strategies and all that. We're going to have a conversation about the little things that matter, which is that you look at this business from a perspective of relationships. You make business decisions with that in mind. You make sure that when you make those business decisions with that in mind, that you inform the person that you are making this sacrifice for. And I presume that you inform the borrower that too. So let's talk about that.
100%.
So let's hypothetically say again, I'm the borrower, right? And I'm like, hey, John, you were referred to me, by my real estate agent, but bottom line, man, is that I've been talking to, a couple of other lenders, and they're a quarter of a percent better than you in the interest rate, and I'm going to go with who gives me the best deal for me and my family. How are you handling that?
That's tough. And by the way, I don't like it when they phrase it that way, because, hopefully I've demonstrated value, throughout the transaction. It's really tough to combat that if, I gave you a pre-approval in August and now you're in escrow, what is today, November 26th, and I haven't spoken to you, right? So I make sure to touch on you all the way through. I make sure to call to check on you to make sure, you know, you're being supported. I check on your agent. Every time I make a call to the bar, I make a call to the agent. So hopefully when we get to that point, it's not, hey, here's the interest rate, let's shop. I want you to feel a little guilty, right? That you're even asking me that question. I want you to feel a little peevish about it. And hopefully at that point, we've demonstrated not only what we're doing here, but what is our plan tomorrow, right? We talk about the market, where the market's going, how we got here and how we get to the next point. Some people don't care. You're going to lose some people due to interest rate, and that's fine. And if you're going to sell rate, you can go work at a bank. But hopefully at that point, one, you always got to have a little something in the reserve to give. I think people like to know that they got something, even if you're not quite where the other place is. If you give them something, they feel better about it. And so usually I try to have a little something left over that I can give, even if it's, giving you credit for your closing costs or something like that. But, that's a real tough conversation. And then look, you let them know who you are. What do you do? What are your plans for tomorrow? and you let them know, hey, I'm here 6 months, 8 months, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, regardless if we have a deal or not, I got your back. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know. You're doing estate planning and you want to figure out how to add your heirs to title and not be reassessed for taxes. Well, I'll help you with that. I know the people to help you with that, to make sure the forms are checked and filed correctly, and I have the people. And so you say, look, I'm not only here for you today. I'm not transactional, even though, for you, this is a big transaction. But you know what's going to happen in 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now. And it's true. And then you follow up with it, right? I mean, people call me all the time and go, oh, hey, I want to slip this into a trust and I'm worried about this and that. And I say, okay, let me put you in with my guy. We're going to make sure you file this thing. And LA wants to reassess your taxes anytime a name changes on title. And let me put, so you try to you try to cement the relationship, and that's all you
I,
can do.
I want to talk about that exact topic, which is the nurturing of the relationship. I want you to, I think I know the answer to this question, but basically walk us through the day in the life of John Wade as a loan originator. Like, what do you do? What are the things that you do all day long that you think equate to your success?
I mean, look, what I'm doing my best is when I'm reaching out to people. Um, I pick up the phone is what I really do. I pick up the phone. Um, Look, of course I've filtered out who's on my hot list, who's on my warm list, and then who are the people that I should just be calling. And then if I get through those, then I just call. But I get on the phone, I call and I talk. Um, I don't always talk business. It's usually about what's going on with you and your life and what's happening. And um, same thing with my agents. I call my agents, I check on my agents. I put lunches together, I put dinners together. But I found that when I'm on the phone, stuff happens, and you're not even sure where it's happening from, but stuff happens. I mean, I have agents that I know that I think love me, and I haven't heard from a while, and then I get on the phone and we start chatting, and then when I say, "Hey, you got anything for your buddy here?" "Oh yeah, I got these two people that I'm talking to. I was hoping you could call them." Great. Would you have sent those to me if I didn't call you? Maybe, but it seems pretty coincidental when I'm on the phone. Now I got two leads from them.
Right. So
And
I
by the
love
way, one other
both.
thing too, this happened to me. This is real. I had a refinance. I won't say her name because I'm assuming this goes out to the public, but just say her name was Jennifer. And I was doing a refinance. I accidentally texted the wrong Jennifer. This is a true story. It would seem fake to me if this didn't happen to me. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm working on a refinance. Can you help me?" I literally got a deal by texting the wrong Jennifer. So there are deals out there. And she liked me. As soon as she texted me, she responded to me immediately. We ended up being able to convert the loan later because rates and who cares about that. But the point is, when you get on the phone and you talk to people and they hear your voice and, you know, uh, that's how I really get my business at this stage of my career is just getting on the phone and talking to people.
So it goes back to this phrase that you've heard me say that I've been saying for, 20 years. It's, your job is to talk to people who need to borrow money and people that can refer you to people that need to borrow money. And if you're doing anything else, you're doing the wrong thing. And I think that you exemplify that as well as any originator that I know. I mean, in the discussions that I've had with you, you just are acutely aware of the fact that this is a relationship business and a connection business. And the more that you are making outbound correspondences to people, whether it be realtors or past clients, your pre-approved borrowers, et cetera, that's what butters your bread. Why do you think it is? I'm curious that so few originators really get this and practice it, because I don't think most people do what you do, which is just pound the phones all day and just make sure that you're reaching out and staying connected with people.
I don't know. I have some originators that work for me and they mention, hey, I hate when I call them and they don't call me back and they don't text me back and I left a message and then I feel bad later and I'm like, why aren't they calling me? And I say, hold on, wait. First off, this is all in here, right? This is a lot of stuff that I'm sure that I know you talk about we tell this story in our head as to why people aren't responding to us or getting back to us. And I don't do that. Right? I don't do that at all. I'm always on the positive side. If you didn't call me back, it's because you're busy. You had nothing to tell me. But the fact that I called you is a touch. It's a touch, and you remember me. You remember me. So, I know call reluctance, reluctance is tough, but when I call, I don't necessarily
Hmm.
have an agenda. I do have an agenda, but the real agenda is, hey, how are you? What's going on? How's life? What are you doing? Right? Even when I have my new inbound calls, I mean, the first thing I look for is I never think about the loan. I never think about the commission. I think about how do I make a connection with this person? And by talking to you and really being interested in you, it's like being at a party and you're meeting a new person and you don't know anybody and you gotta find your way through that room, that throng of people. It's, well, how do you find people and connect to them and find commonality and then be able to develop a relationship? And even though it's easier, because I know when people call me, they're looking for loans, great. But I'm not here to just talk about loans. I want to find a way to connect with you. And so when I call these other people, I'm trying to find a way to connect. I want to get to know you. Um, I want to build a relationship. Again, it all goes for me, it all goes back to relationships. Um, again, I want you to be like, God, I really want to work with this guy. I really like this guy. This guy has imparted to me not only information and structure, and got a lot of good information on my presentation, which I know is really difficult to go through. But at the end of the day, I want you to say, hey, I really enjoyed talking to this person. And when the transaction's over, I want to be like, hey, I miss you, right? That's what I tell and that's one of the things that I say to some of these agents that we had like a really nice deal. I go, hey, I miss talking to you. It's a great way to open a conversation. Yeah, we did this great thing together. God, I just miss talking to you. I got used to talking to you every day, right? And then you launch into some social, personal stuff. And then how do I transcend the business and get to the personal?
Is there, and absolutely fucking love everything you're saying. I mean, like, to me, this is the art. What you're really talking about is networking. But the thing is that I think networking gets boxed into some strategy, right? And once you make it a strategy and it's contrived, and then have your own initiative and agenda, that's when you don't really have true connection with somebody. And what I'm hearing you say is that, well, I love, first of all, that you are not making up the story, which I'm very guilty of this person didn't call me back because they don't like me. And you're like, they're just busy. I mean, that's brilliant. It's foolish to not win in your own fantasies. If you're going to make shit up, then you might as well make up a story that benefits you. So that's what I'm hearing there. And then I love the reality. I really love this philosophy of, I want them to miss me when the deal's over. How do I get them to miss me? Well, you're going to get them to miss you because you cared about them, because you took an interest in them. We don't have enough of that in this world. I mean, what a surprise and how refreshing it would be to just have somebody that actually gave a shit about me for 45 days and truly was patient. So without the contrived part, the question is this: do you have like some go-to questions or some places that you try to take the conversation initially to make that connection and to get to know them, to get them to open up to you? Or is that just something that just flows naturally and you don't really have any go-to stuff?
Look, I used to think I didn't have scripts, but I do have scripts because I'll be
You
sitting
do.
in the car with my wife and we're going to like Palm Springs and I'll have 9 phone calls and I'll say a variation of the same thing, right? And you add and you kind of pick and so it's really difficult to say because everybody's different. Everybody reacts different. But look, I gave you one when we first started this thing. I call somebody I haven't spoken to. Hey, Cindy, how are you? I'm doing great. How are you? Oh, my wife still my kids are healthy. My wife still loves me. Simple. People love that, right? Oh, okay, great. And then we pivot into the family. Well, how are your kids? How is this? How's going on? Oh my gosh. And so for me, it's, trying to figure out when you're talking to somebody, what interests them. I mean, you can have a conversation with somebody, right? So the idea is I'm meeting a stranger who's coming to me because they want something and they need something. And I believe, and I have never thought this out before, so I'm saying it for the first time, but when you come to me for the first time, you probably want me to like you, right?
Hmm.
You want to connect with me. Hey, I got this loan. I'm nervous. Some questions. And how do I do this? And so, hey, I'm going to be inviting to you. You're the stranger coming to the party. And I'm the guy who's here. I'm the cool guy already. So then how as the cool guy do I make you feel warm and welcome and inviting? And so then I talk to you and ask you questions. What do you got going on? And what are you doing? And you know, if you start telling me stories as people do, hey, I want to buy this house because we're having our first baby and my apartment's too great. You just gave me a nugget there, right? And it's really hard to give a real answer, but as I'm sure you know, when you're talking to people give you nuggets. People give you things that you can talk about. And there's a way to connect with people by just listening to what they say. And then you can start a conversation on that, and who knows where it leads. I mean, I've had conversations about, I mean, parents and life and kids. And I mean, I love talking about kids, and the good thing is I've got 8-year-old kids. You've got kids. We don't all have kids. But as we know, most home buyers who get into the market, right, has to do when they're getting married and they're having kids, right? So I talk about kids and I talk about I don't know, how hard it is for us parents of our generation, right? Because our parents yelled at us and now our kids yell at us because, we're the soft parents now. There's just so many ways to connect with someone, but be real and be genuine and be interested. It's hard to be fake, right? So let whatever that is that's about you kind of shine through and try to make a connection with someone. I don't know, you're on a date. We're on a date here. When I'm on a date, I'm gonna try to be my best self and I'm gonna try to be interested. And I am interested, right? You're gonna genuinely because if you're on a date with somebody that you really want, that you're really interested in, because I want to do business with you. I'm very interested in you. How do you have a nice first date?
Great metaphor. I'll share with you, like, I just had a total recall. I remember when we were doing one of my loans many years ago. I remember this is an example of like an entry point was that you had said, "Hey man," you said, we were on the phone. I remember I was sitting in my kitchen talking to you and you're like, "Hey man, how do you like your Tesla? You have a Tesla. Like I've been thinking about buying one and tell me what you like about it." And you were like really curious about my car. We had like a 5-7 minute conversation around it. And I was telling you about, how you plug it in your garage and this and that. I mean, that's just an example. But the key thing that you said is, you have to genuinely be interested in the person. And guess what? You can't genuinely be interested in someone if you're completely absorbed in trying to sell them on you.
100%.
That's the key is like, what if you just set that aside and wasn't so concerned about convincing somebody as to how great you are and just genuinely took interest in them and made that your way of doing business. So let's talk about tennis. You
Okay.
ready?
Okay.
By the way, I don't know if you know, I don't think you know this, but I'm hobbling. I just got off crutches today,
Oh no.
for the first time.
You look great from the chest up.
From the chest up, I look like a specimen. Well, I heard it in the most that I'm deeming this the most dangerous sport in the world now, pickleball. Okay. I
Okay.
tore my calf. And the
Mm.
reason that I think pickleball is the most dangerous sport in the world is because it seduces old people into thinking that they're young again.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. I
By
went,
the way, I'm thinking about picking up pickleball. How dare you? I
well,
think I'm in that
you're a
boat.
tennis player, so you'll probably be great at it. And we still need to get out there and play.
Yeah.
By the way, so you had made a brilliant metaphor back in the spring when we were on retreat together about your backhand sucks, as I'm told by you, and you have a powerful forehand.
I should have told you
Well,
that. We're not playing tennis now.
yeah, I'm gonna go for your
Yeah.
backhand for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me about this metaphor of the backhand and the forehand because I think everybody needs to hear this.
Well, I'll try to recapture it as best I can. It has to do with our business, and a lot of people do things very well that I don't do very well. And so, in my mind, I was like, well, how do I do this? Because this originator here is, let's say, very good at social media and putting together stories and I'm going to throw a shout out to your guy, Mark Bowie. He's so great on like social media and these stories. You go, dang, this guy's so cool, right? I can't do that, right? And so instead of trying to force myself into work, spending all this energy on doing something that I'm not so great at, I said, you know what I'm really good at is this here. What I'm really good at is, say, my relationship building, creating a as deep a connection as you can, but a fairly deep connection quickly. And so when it came back to tennis, right, I got a really strong forehand, right? I mean, I can move that ball, I can hit top spin and drop, and I can do some fantastic things with it. And why not lean into my strength, right? Why am I focusing on what I'm bad at when I have this really, really fantastic strength that I'm good at, which has been proven to win me games, win me points consistently. If I hit that forehand, man, I'm gonna knock it, kick the ball over your head, and now you're on the defensive. Or if I, so for me, it became, hey, how do I focus on what I'm really good at instead of worrying about what I'm really bad at? Because you know what, and a lot of times, if you focus to your strength, I mean, if you can kind of direct the game so that it's into your strength. And by the way, a lot of tennis players run around their backhand, right? They do it on purpose because a lot of them have strong forehand. But the point is, if I can keep the game, if I can control the tempo and not get pulled into a place where I'm weak, I'm going to be successful.
A great metaphor. And having, as you know, coached and worked with, hundreds and if not thousands of loan officers over the course of my career, it's something I think everybody needs to hear, because I see originators all the time trying to be somebody that they're not and that they're not naturally gifted at. So even you take Mark Bowie's reels, okay?
They're so cool. I mean,
They're so good, right?
you look at it, you go, oh, what am I even doing? Like, it makes you not want to do it.
Yeah, right. I mean, but they're uniquely him.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, like, if you're going to be on social media, unless you have that style of sense of humor and have that interest in films that you could be researching. I mean, think about all the films he has to research and find the scene that he wants to cut himself into and all that kind of stuff. If that's not you, then don't try to be him. Like, just be you. What are you good at? You've identified you're technically strong as an originator and you're genuinely curious about people and know how to build relationships. So that's your forehand, and you're just going to pound that forehand, versus trying to, be the social media guy or the guy that goes out and gets builder accounts or whatever the case may be. When it comes to, I want to go back to realtors for just a second. Is there, I don't know enough about your approach with this, but like, how do you get your realtor partners? Do you target them and approach them in a cold way, or do you just cross sell people involved in a transaction? What do you do to meet the listing agent? Anything special there?
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, yeah, I mean, it might be nice to kind of, walk into an office with a box of donuts, which thank God I don't have to do that anymore. But at this point, it's just touching everybody on a transaction, right? I've really changed my mindset, and I had an epiphany when I was in your L360. It was before, it was like, how do I get more leads? I need more leads. I need more leads. I was like, wait a minute, I have plenty of leads. So how do I then convert these leads at a higher level, right? You get 300 at bats and you get on base 30 times, you're happy. But I'm still getting 50, 60 at bats a month, and they're all warm. I mean, I don't do lead gen, it's all referral based. So I'm like, how do I convert these at the highest level? And then how do I make the most out of each of these? So yeah, as soon as I get a new I get buyers without agents, great. I call that agent and make the connection and follow up and call them and check on them, get them on the phone. And same thing with the listing agents, get them on the phone. They want to talk to you right now. If your phone number pops up in their feed, they're going to pick it up, right? They're going to call you back. And so it's an opportunity then to sort of do big things.
How often do you touch base with the real estate agents in a typical transaction? Let's say it's a 45-day closing. How many times will you call them and say hello?
That's tough to say, right? Because, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how busy you are, my buyer's agents, if I know them, I always look, you don't neglect any relationship, right? I'm married. I still date my wife, right? She calls me in the middle of my day. I put down the phone and I listen to her. In the old days, I'd be like, I'm too busy. Wait a minute. I need to invest. I need to put chits in that bank. So my buyer's agents, I call them, I check on them regularly. I'd say once a week. Same thing with the listing agents. I mean, anytime there's good news, um, or a call that makes sense, I pick up the phone. So it depends on each deal, but I'd say there's at least 4 or 5 times, six
Wow,
times.
that's a lot. And I hope everybody's taking note of that. So 4, 5, 6 times over the course of 45 days, you're 1,000% correct. They've got to take your phone call. And I'll add, and I'm sure I'm thinking you'll agree with this, is that somebody's sitting there going, well, what do you say 4 or 5 times that you call them? Well, if you know something about them personally, because you've taken the time to get to know them early on, you're not necessarily always having to make it about business all the time. You're
Right.
checking with, who their favorite sports team is. I mean, you and I are both LA true and true. Like if I was the agent, you'd be calling me about our Bruins, you'd be calling me about our Dodgers. I mean, and then maybe we have a little update on the file in there, but it's mostly about the connection, I would assume. Is that right?
100%. And also letting them know what you're doing, especially on a tough deal. I call them all the time and say, do you know what I just did? People don't know. People don't know how great you are. You know,
True.
never
Say more
miss.
about that. Say more, but that's important.
So I'm not a braggadocio type person, naturally, but I always remind myself, there's this quote by Golda Meir. Do you know who she is?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
sure. Prime
So
Minister of India?
Israel back in the 70s.
Israel. Sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Israel. Sorry.
So she had this quote. She said, "Don't be so humble. You're not that great." And what that means to me is like, if you're Michael Jordan, yeah, I shoot around a little bit. If you're Tiger Woods, yeah, I hack around on the golf course. You're so freaking great where it's okay to be humble. But when you're me, you don't know who I am, right? So I remind myself to tell people all the great things I'm doing. Right. It's like if you went to your heart surgeon, you go, "Hey doc, are you any good at this?" He goes, I win some, you lose some. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear, "Hey, let me tell you something. You got the best guy. You found him." And so I make a point, especially on tough deals, I say, "Hey, look, you got the right guy. You found him. I'm that guy. I'm that guy that's going to get you across the finish line." Yes, I just had one recently. Got denied by 2 other places. I'm that guy. You found him. You're going to want to remember me because I'm the guy who takes these deals that went sideways and I save the deal. And so I remind myself of the tough deals because it's important to let them know what you did, how great you were, because they don't know how great you are. And tell my own agent, see, look, this is why you use me because I'm that guy who gets it done for you when you didn't think it could be done. And so, it's finding these opportunities. And look, some agents don't want to talk to you. Some do. That's okay. I don't take it personal. I'm still going to call you. I'm still going to check on you. And then when
You leave a message?
sure, I'll give a message. Yeah.
Give me an idea. Like, what do you say when you leave a message? Do you like make them laugh? Do you say something funny? Do you just cut straight to the chase business wise?
Hard to say, man. It depends on how that relationship goes. Obviously, I want to come with high energy, right? And for me, I'm all about energy, which is one thing that I've really taken from you. Is just try to set my energy level and find that I'm giving out positivity, that something that you're going to want to respond to. But I'm not so good at the role playing, but I do I do try to make it upbeat and friendly. I'll give you a little update, but really I want you to call me, really. I want you on the phone with me. I'm not just going to call and say, "Hey, it's Tuesday and your loan's out of underwriting." And I want to say, "Give me a call, let's talk about this." And then ask questions. And I love it when I get done, when I'm done early. "Hey, I'm done. Are we ready to close?" "Well," I said, "Okay, well, I got this." And the seller, I said, "Okay, well, I'm ready to close. If you're ready to close, I'm ready to close. Let's go early." Right. And so the idea is just getting on the phone and just kind of letting them know if you did a good job, what a great job you did. If you didn't, if things went sideways, also then explaining, how bad it went sideways and how this deal could have gone off the rails if it was anybody else. Sometimes deals go sideways, right? And so to let them know, "Hey, this deal went sideways, but you're lucky it was me because this train would have went off the tracks and crashed, but I saved it."
I love that there's so many great teachings in this conversation that I just don't want people to miss. So, this notion of you calling consistently calling, not just one time, but throughout the transaction, calling both agents. But that subtlety of, I want them to call me back. So I'm not going to just give them the update. I'm going to say, hey, it's Tim Braheem. We're working on this deal together. Give me a call back. I want to chat with you about it. That's a guaranteed return phone
Oh,
call. There's no
100%.
way they can not call you back.
Yeah.
And now you've got them. That's like you hitting your forehand, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like you're like, hey, look, come on over here to my forehand, which
Yeah.
is my ability to connect with you.
Mhm.
And to say more about that, it sounds like you might want to say something to that point.
I mean, you nailed it though. I want you to call me back. I want to get you on the phone. I don't want you to forget about me, right? I want to be memorable. Um, and so you're 100% right. Hey, it's John Wade. Call me back. I want to talk to you about the loan. Ooh, what's want to talk about? Right.
Yeah.
Um, you're a captive audience. I have you for 30 days. And so when I think about, and I know some guys that do pretty well cold calling agents, I don't have to cold call you. I mean, I call you and you want to talk to me. You desperately want to talk to me. You're nervous. You're worried about this, especially in this market. You're worried about your commission, your check. Are you going to close on time? I also ask questions. Hey, anything you need to tell me in the beginning about your seller? Is he moving? Is he doing this? Is he doing that? Try to let them know, hey, I'm actually concerned about you as well, not just my buyer. I'm concerned about your seller. What do they got going on? Is there anything that I need to know about? Are they go on vacation, or do they need to sell this house so they can move their family across country to go, whatever it is? Find a way to kind of build a relationship there. And there's opportunities. Not always, but there's opportunities.
Yeah. And I mean, think about, you leave that message and hey, it's John Wade. I want to talk to you about blah, 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 blah. Give me a call. All right. So now they got the butterflies in their stomach a little bit
Right.
because
Yeah.
they're worried that this is
Yeah.
going to be a shitty call. And they call you, and it's like almost like you set up an intentional under
Right.
promise and over
Yeah.
deliver
Yeah.
because it's just all good news. And they're
Yeah.
like relieved and their guard goes down, and now you
Mhm.
can, have a fun conversation. And
But you're
that,
right, though, as you know, if you're stressed out and then the good news comes in, oh, you feel good. You feel a
yes,
little like, oh,
that little
now it's
dopamine hit.
easier. Yeah, and it's easier to convert into something that's more friendly and that's more, they want to connect with you at that point because they feel good.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about like all the originators out there that don't do what we're talking about. And they do deal after deal after deal, and they're not memorable, to your point. They're not remembered. They're just another loan originator that got another loan done that might have been a tough loan that nobody knew was a tough loan because they didn't do all these little things to take advantage of the opportunity to have that captive audience and shine a little bit of a light on their skills by making sure that they share, like the Prime Minister of India and Israel, Golda Meir, it's shared about, you're not that important.
Yeah.
Uh, bro, that was fantastic. I'm so glad we went there. Okay, let's what's one weakness that you feel like you have as an originator that you're working on right now? What's your backhand?
My backhand is, I'm working towards getting systems on it, but one, look, I should get out. It's a tough one. I have so many weaknesses, you know. And do I want to shine a light on my warts? I've gotten really good at my database, so that's something out there. I should be calling my database. Um, that's an obvious miss, and I think everybody knows they should be calling their database. Um, I should be out there more. I find that it's easy for me to sit in my office and call my past clients and call my realtors and I you told me this, right? The idea is to, you know, get in front of as many new people as possible, right? I know I should probably do stuff like that. I know a lot of guys that you have, hold these big seminars and 100 realtors, and where else can you touch on 100 realtors at one time? I mean, there's stuff like that I know that I should be doing. Then again, it's kind of my backhand, right?
Mhm.
You know me, I'm a very social guy and I like people, but I'm also have a hint of shyness. And so something like that, really puts me way far out of where I want to be. But but maybe it's something I'm good at. I don't know. Maybe that's something we should talk about later. But um, I do know that I should be throwing a broader net, not only trying to capture what I have at a higher level, but I should also be trying to focus on getting, new leads, new referral partners, because ultimately I do think I'm really good at what I do. And I think it's just projecting that message to people who I don't have the opportunity to touch. This is a big industry and there's a lot of people that I'm not touching. If I'm
Yeah, I mean, I think that
open.
you could explore the one to many format where you're out there presenting in front of, 50 real estate agents at a lunch and learn or something like that. But, knowing you fairly well, I mean, obviously I don't haven't known you. I mean, I've experienced you though on the consumer end. So that's helpful. You're a one-on-one guy in a lot of ways.
Man,
And that's like where your wheelhouse is. Like you're very special in that regard. So I'd be careful. I mean, you could try it out, but like I wouldn't beat yourself up if it didn't come naturally. If you're just like, that's my backhand and I'm just going to go hit my forehand again. I think it's like, how do you get yourself? You're a biz dev guy. I mean, that's really what you do. I mean, you like to fit the model of the perfect business development position. I'd be looking a little bit more at like, how do you shed some of the things that drag you down from being engaged with more people? Because I think that's your superpower. That's my thought.
I mean, that's true. I do get caught a little too much into my loans, a little too much into my business. You know, I don't know if it's a function of the time where we are right now. Each transaction is more important, like, if I'm doing 25 deals a month, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but I'm doing 10, 8 to 10, you're like, wait a minute, I need to kind of focus to make sure that we convert this. But um, yeah, I don't know. I think you're right though. I mean, I do think maybe I'll talk to you about that later.
Anytime, bro. I'm going to conclude with one final question. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. So you have an opportunity to have a conversation with you when you were 18 years old, with all the knowledge that you have right now in your arsenal. What would you share with your 18-year-old self as some advice?
Mm, that's a tough one. Maybe everything's in you, you know. Don't be so afraid. Don't be so nervous, and don't be so self-critical. Everybody's worried about themselves. No one's really worried about you as much as you think they are. And just get out there and you know, don't be afraid to make a risk or fail or look silly or looks stupid, because we're all silly and stupid ultimately, right? And gosh, it's a tough question, but I guess for me, yeah, it's just, um everything that you need is inside of you. You just need to learn how to access it and learn how to sort of embrace who you are, and not so much who you wish you were. But then at 18, you're like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, but listen, I think that whether you realize this or not, your answer is very beautiful in the sense that it's super autobiographical to what you just did.
Yeah.
So I know that when I asked you to be on my podcast, your initial reaction was that of reservation because you're not particularly comfortable with this medium of being on video and
Mhm.
holding court and all that. I mean, that's that hint of shyness that you've talked about. I mean, I remember on many of our Zoom calls, like you sit really far away from the camera and all of those types of things, but you just stepped into it.
I'm not as good looking as you, Tim. You
I don't think there's
you
anything.
like to be front and center. Are you looking at yourself this whole time?
No, I'm looking in the camera. That
Um,
that that side of you though, like you just really like bravely stepped into something that's a discomfort of yours. So the advice that you just gave yourself is perfect for what you just did. And I just want to say thank you for doing that because I think that you helped a lot of people in this conversation. And I'm super excited for Group 11 to brag on you to them about what a great job you did. And I know that they're going to love listening to this because they're such, such fans of yours and friends with you. So really, I'm stoked that you're having a great year. I hope that 2025 is even better. And
Amen.
I'm just really grateful for the time together, man.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you very much, and you've been fantastic, very influential and instrumental in my life in ways that I wouldn't have realized. And it's all these sort of small, sort of subtle ways that really make a big difference. And thank you. Love you, bro.
I love you too, man. And I'm really looking forward to going and catching a Dodger game together to celebrate the
Sure.
World
Go
Championship,
Dodgers,
man.
baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the 360 Experience with John Wade, and we'll be back at you in a couple of weeks. Happy holidays, everyone. Bye bye.